I hope that each and every person who hears what I have to say about this topic will go out saying, gee, I never thought about it like that before. We've called them cancer sticks for generations, and yet we have, according to the New England Journal of Medicine in February 2015, the highest number of deaths due to smoking are going to happen this year. 480,000 Americans will die due to tobacco-related diseases. It's astounding. So why, as a med student, would I have possibly wanted to devote my time to this? Because it wasn't taught. I expected to be hearing lectures, and what do we do about it? It's not taught, with all due respect, today. It's such an intellectually simplistic issue that we forgot to teach about it. We just assume that we're not very effective at it, we wag our fingers, but it's really not anything that the skill level has reached. And I just can't explain it. So I'm here to try to change that. And one of the ways to do that is through humor. And one of the ways is to shift the focus away from smoking and nicotine and lung cancer and on to the major preventable cause of death, the number one avoidable cause of death in the United States. It's not smoking, it's not lung cancer, it's Marlboro. So keep that in mind and get those brand names to roll off your tongue, because that's what people are buying. Have you heard people go into stores and buy cigarettes? They don't say, can I have a pack of nicotine? They say, can I have a pack of Benson & Hedges Lights, Crushed Fruit Box Menthol Regular 100s? You know, it goes on, and they think they've got their own brand. But Doc, I smoke low tar. You know, and I say to her, but Helen, why do you, it's astounding. So these are the things that I try to get people to think about differently. The cigarettes are mainly a mainstay of the economy. So the other inspiration in my life was my father, who was a family doctor and who had a problem. Because although he was an athlete and although he didn't have a family history of heart disease, at age 44 he suffered a heart attack. And of course, the main reason he believed was that in his 20s, when he was in medical school, like everybody else, he took up smoking. So he was a 2-pack-a-day Chesterfield smoker, and he was watching baseball games with me and suggested in the early part of my life that I should save these ads, because one day no one will believe that sports and smoking and movie stars and smoking could possibly be promoted together. And let's go back to the early, mid-1950s, and this is what, if you saw television, this is what you could see.
What cigarette do you smoke? You'll be interested to know how the doctors of America answered that question. Tens of thousands of doctors in all parts of the country, in every state of the Union. Doctors in every branch of medicine were asked,
what cigarette do you smoke, doctor?
In this nationwide survey of general practitioners, surgeons, throat specialists, diagnosticians, and so on, the brand named most was Camel.
Yes, according to this survey, more doctors smoke Camels than any other cigarette. Try Camels yourself. Make the one sensible cigarette test. Make your own 30-day Camel mildness test in your T-zone. Smoke only Camels for 30 days. Enjoy Camel's rich, full flavor, and see how well Camels agree with your throat, pack after pack, week after week. See for yourself why Camels are so popular with the doctors of America.
He'd get medical journals, like the Journal of the American Medical Association, with the same Camel cigarette ads. Or Kent, the cigarette that came out with a filter, because they knew that people were beginning to get upset because they'd heard something about smoking and lung cancer by the 1950s, and Kent came out with the earliest cigarette filter, a filter that was advertised as so safe, so pure, it's used to filter the air in many hospitals. And what was the filter made out of? Asbestos. Little Johnny would call for Philip Morris, and nobody ever wondered what stunted his growth. But this was to become the leading cigarette. But I grew up with baseball. And we'd be watching the Dodger games from Ebbets Field, and before the games, they'd have a game where players like Jackie Robinson would throw balls out, and Little Leaguers would come and run and field and catch. And this was an example of Happy Felton's not holding.
Charge it, Richie.
Charge this one now.
What? Bad bounce. Bad
Bad
bounce.
hop, all right.
Right up.
Get this
Come
one
on
out.
in now.
A cigarette billboard right there for that kid to grow up with, just like the players. You could go over across the river to the Polo Grounds and see a Chesterfield sign, or over at Yankee Stadium, the greatest player of the era, Joe DiMaggio, pushing, good cough, Joe DiMaggio promoting Chesterfields. And years later, Joe DiMaggio would die of lung cancer. Now, I used to say that this was the good lung on the left and the bad lung with the white cancer on it, but somebody pointed out that that's not exactly, they're both no longer in the people, so, but you get the point. You know, this is what the kids get in school. You got to explain to them that this is the real thing. And the only way you can explain to kids, because we've gone out into schools and classrooms and the community and in the clinics, but it's all abstract until you join me on rounds and see the patients. But it all changed in 1964. Alabamian Dr.
begins
Luther
with this
Terry.
historic announcement by the Surgeon General of the United States on January 11, 1964.
It is a judgment of the committee that cigarette smoking contributes substantially to mortality from certain specific diseases.
This was the landmark Surgeon General's report that didn't even make the cover of Life magazine that week because the back cover was a cigarette ad. And my father got this report along with a letter, as did every physician, and he handed me a copy, and I wrote my very first editorial as editor of my high school newspaper in 1964. So I am actually the longest-running anti-smoking activist as far as I know. And I'm not so certain whether that's something that we want to be proud of or not, because it just went on and on and on. You could turn on TV and see, let's see, if you could see Fred Flintstone. Do we have that working? And, or even more importantly,
Marlboro country.
night in and night out.
You get a lot to like with a Marlboro filter flavor pack or box.
Come to where the flavor is. Famous Marlboro Red or new Marlboro 100s, the Longhorns. Come to Marlboro country.
Astounding. And for many people, this is the first time they've seen one of these, but I grew up night after night, week after week, with these ads. We did, in 1971, get them off television, but almost the next day they came back in the form of sports sponsorship. I don't know whether you can read the warning sign from the back of the auditorium, but this is the kind of circumvention that the industry has always been very good at. And then if you went almost anywhere in the United States, any major city, let's say New York, this is what you would be likely to see.
We hardly notice them anymore, but they affect us whether we are aware of them or not. Advertising is like that, and the most heavily advertised product in the world is cigarettes. More than half of the billboards you're likely to see are selling this single product. And what they're selling is a hoax. This ad tells you that smoking is likely to make you into a man. It's more likely to make you into a corpse. But I had to come all the way up here to read the health warning in the fine print at the bottom of the ad.
So you were confronted with this. We worked very hard, a small group of physicians and I, and a group called DOC, aimed very hard to use the power of humor to laugh these pushers out of town because they don't like to be made fun of. They love to be called dangerous and risk-taking. Remember Joe Camel on billboards? This is Times Square, New York. And eventually we succeeded. In the 1998 Master Settlement Agreement with the tobacco industry, the billboards went away, or so we thought. But they quickly came back again in the form of arts sponsorship, or the opera, or even at the Whitney Museum of Art at Philip Morris, maker of Marlboro. And a group of sixth graders were coming out of there one day, and I saw them. I asked the teacher if I could ask them a question. I said, kids, what does Philip Morris make? And one little girl said, I know, paintings. So it's really not just knowing about the dangers of smoking. Half the kids think that Virginia Slims was a tennis tournament without realizing it was a cigarette. You could go downtown and see the Benson and Hedges Jazz Festival, but uptown in Harlem, that's the kind of message you got because they know how to target their audience. And African Americans have been a major target of the tobacco industry to this day, and not helped by the NAACP or the Urban League or the United Negro College Fund, which have been major recipients of tobacco industry largesse. And the Heart Association, bless their heart, they just got $14 million to study the tobacco issue, as if we don't know what to do about it. The Heart Association used to take out billboards like that say, basically, give us money. We're fighting for your life. But the tobacco companies always came along and said, we offer you more. U.S. News and World Report would talk about drugs on the front cover and sell you a pack of risk factors for it on the back cover. Or Time magazine talk about kids on crack, but Marlboro on the back. And these were the journals that I edited in the 1980s. Doctors read them. They were the first journals ever devoted entirely to the world tobacco pandemic. I spent several years working on this, and as the result, I was fired for spending too much time on smoking. We need to write more articles on malpractice and why doctors can't afford their third Mercedes. This is what I was told. Not exactly, but you get the picture. The economic guild that organized medicine represents has never been actively involved in the tobacco issue until the very recent times. The AMA held millions of dollars in their tobacco pension fund, in their members' pension fund. We had to beg them to stop doing this. And this is the kind of pulling of teeth that it's taken all these years. When I got hired at Baylor College of Medicine before coming to the University of Alabama as a faculty member, I was warned by one of the deans. He said, you know, maybe you should get into something more socially acceptable like cocaine. Meaning that that's where the grant money was coming from. And when I was offered the editorship of the largest family medicine journal in the world, and I beat 31 other applicants, I was given a contract to edit The American Family Physician, a dream come true. And the last paragraph in a different typeface said, the editor will not be permitted to speak publicly on the subject of tobacco. Why? Well, they still had food companies. Philip Morris had General Foods and Kraft. They were big advertisers of the Academy. So you could get the sense of how difficult it was. And medical schools to this day are not very involved in this issue. So Doc was born to laugh the pushers out of town, to shift the focus into the clinic, the classroom, and community, get more activist physicians involved. And who did we want to shift the focus on to? The American tobacco companies, which we called cancer's 7 warning signs. And that's really the shift of focus that needs to be done. In the office, we develop little prescriptions to give to the patients, to give to the kids, but when they go to the pharmacies, what do they see? The Smokebusters Center for Nicotrol and then the Marlboro right next to it. There's even a store in Milwaukee, Wisconsin called Pill and Puff. And then on billboards, we wanted to get on billboards, but we weren't allowed. They wouldn't sell us space. So we had to go across the street to the bus bench companies to welcome people to the taste of country fresh arsenic. Now, you can imagine the first few times people would drop, what is this new brand? You know, we got complaints because we didn't put the warning label. But they did not like this, and we were sued by the tobacco industry. Fortunately, there's something we have in this country called the First Amendment, which means you can laugh at a tobacco company. I smoke for taste. This is the macho actors. We got a much more macho guy to say, hey, I smoke for smell. And this is the kind of campaign that you could see taking off, but the Cancer Society and the others, oh, no, they wouldn't come near us. Oh, no, you're going to get sued. Oh, no, we can't do that. We have to do public service ads. And you know what public service ads are? Those are the ads that are on at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning telling the kids not to take rides with strangers, when the only people up that time are not watching are the strangers. It's crazy. The Cancer Society has not spent 1/3 of its money to fight the 1/3 of cancer deaths, which is due to smoking. I don't know where they're putting the money, but it's not into where it should be. And you could see this campaign, but they didn't want us to do it. And we even sponsored the U.S. Boomerang team. We raised $10,000, and I became like the Don King of boomeranging. So the university can sponsor things. And we created an ad to spoof this one. This was a new brand called Dakota. And we just simply said Dakota, to cough, to cancer, or to coffin. And the Houston Post and the Houston Chronicle refused to run this ad because it would offend their cigarette advertisers. We found one small weekly that took the ads and immediately lost all of their cigarette advertising. This is the late 1980s. This is not the 1950s. What have we lost, and why has this issue not changed? We've lost 20 million people since that report by Dr. Terry came out. That's like several times the population of Alabama, 5 or 6 times, and equal to the state of Pennsylvania, just lopped off the map. All avoidable, all preventable. 1/3 of all cancer deaths. It's astounding that we have almost the same number of people smoking today. Our prevalence has gone way down, but the absolute number is just about the same, and the cohort, the 20, 30-somethings, is actually higher than ever. So it's astounding that we really are not there. You can hear that music. People remember this from the Magnificent Seven as many, many years later. It just gets into you because these people were geniuses. To sell death as they did is incredible. You have to admire them for it. And this is where they are today. This is right off the internet, Marlboro.com. The stuff they're doing all over the world, especially in Germany, you could be on one of these for an hour because they take you on adventures through Marlboro country. And what about CVS? About a year ago, we were going to give them the Nobel Prize for what? For stopping the sale of cigarettes in 1 year. They said they were going to announce that they were going to stop it in a year. This is a pharmacy. And why did they do it? They didn't do it because we tried to plead for 30 years for them to stop. They did it because they're opening up clinics now. And they've changed the name to CVS Health. And it would have been doggone embarrassing to keep selling cigarettes. And take a look at who used to be involved. Kodak made the filters. Kimberly-Clark made the cigarette paper. 3M, the billboards that you saw, they were all in cahoots with the tobacco industry. And what about today? That's right, the University of Virginia, $20–30 million from Philip Morris. Condé Nast, a publisher of Vanity Fair and The New Yorker, still takes cigarette advertisements. TIAA-CREF, which many of us who teach in universities have our pension funds invested in, they are among the leading holders of tobacco stocks. It goes on and on. Diversity, Inc. puts Philip Morris, and now it's called Altria, as among their top companies. It's astounding. How about Siemens? If you've had a blood test or had a scan, chances are you went through a Siemens scanner. But what else does Siemens make? Why not the world's fastest cigarette-making machines? In just the time that this talk took, they have made tens of thousands of packs of cigarettes on just one Siemens cigarette-making machine. Truly astounding. Well, let's just wrap it up by talking about universities. Surely we're the bastion of the future. Surely we can educate and lead to the next generation. Back in the 40s, we laugh at this image of the letterman and the co-ed just lounging with a camel, but only 50 years after that picture was taken, my son was detailed at Syracuse University to work to R.J. Reynolds Tobacco Company. And Philip Morris and RJR still go to dozens of campuses across the United States. Here is Altria recruiting at a campus career fair at the University of Virginia. And how about this when I interviewed one of the recruiters? From the brightest to in the retail area now, in the territories. I mean, is that really, obviously, you're not looking for dole.
What do you mean, for our consumers, or you mean for recruiting purposes?
Or you're looking to recruit folks that are going to go out there and really be in love with the product and sell it and say, people have a free choice, and yet
No. We are looking for kids. Part of our mission is being responsible, effective, and respected. Okay? And what we are doing is we're looking for people that can handle the responsibility of marketing a product that causes harm. And in that means being responsible. It means making sure your accounts know to card everybody that comes through the store. It means making sure that you don't put tobacco products on your counters so that children, it's at eye level for children. Those are the things that we try to do to be responsible.
Well, there you have it. I brought you a message, I hope tonight, at least leave you one, of love. The love that I've had for my wife, Doris, is really my other inspiration, because I don't think anyone could have put up with someone who's been beating his head against the wall for 50 years, trying to counteract the leading avoidable cause of death and disease. And the opposition that I've received from universities, from the mass media, the ridicule that the few of us who do this, and now the entrepreneurship that's taken over the field, which is called tobacco control. And you know what they're fighting for now? They're not fighting against smoking. They're fighting for the grants to study smoking. It's truly a tragedy. So I hope I've shifted your focus, and I hope I've turned your vocabulary around. I hope that what you'll be able to do is to join me in becoming a little bit more of a super health person by leaping tall buildings at a single bound and being faster than a locomotive in sending a super health message that this is still a very serious issue. Thanks.